एक बार ऊंची आवाज़ आएगी आपको। नमस्कार। ये स्वामी जी आपकी कृपा से ये मेरे जीवन की दूसरी बार है कि मैं अशोका होटल में आया हूँ। पहली बार बहुत साल पहले जेएनयू में मेरे एक कलीग होते थे, बड़े धनाढ्य कलीग होते थे और उनका नाम था धनेश जैन। तो उन्होंने हमको इनवाइट किया अशोका होटल में कि आप खाना खाने आइए। हमने कहा आ जाएंगे, एक शर्त है। क्या? कि मेनू कार्ड जो होगा उसे आप देख के ऑर्डर करेंगे, क्योंकि अगर हम देखेंगे तो हम राइट कॉलम देखते हैं कॉस्ट का, और जो पेज पे सबसे कम होता है उधर जाके कहते हैं ये खाएंगे। विक्टिम ऑफ माय मिडिल क्लास मेंटालिटी। तो मैं आज फिर इतने आलीशान बिल्डिंग में होटल में आया। हिंदू रीइमर्ज तो हो ही गए और हमारी सोच के हिंदू यहाँ आ गए। इतना सुंदर, इतना बढ़िया जगह के ऊपर। सब्जेक्ट बड़ा थोड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है, बट थोड़ी एम्बिग्विटी हमको लगती है इसमें। कुछ प्रश्न मन में आते हैं। ये जो अंग्रेजी में री के साथ जो शब्द चलते हैं, English, please.
Many foreigners who would like to hear you, they want in English.
Okay. I was getting contrary instructions. All right. They want me to prove that I was professor of English. So I was saying that the title raises some questions in my mind, the issue. One, I'm a little chary about using words with a initial re. Revive, reemerge, resuscitate, reinvigorate, particularly when it is used in relation to our civilization and culture. Because we had long arguments in our academic life with very, very senior professors who would talk about reviving Indian culture, Indian civilization and all that. And when one used to tell those gentlemen, very worthy of great respect, no doubt, that I think it is not the civilization which needs to be revived, it is we people who need to be revived. The civilization, Hindu civilization or culture, was never submerged, never. And there is no question of the Hindu civilization and culture re-emerging. What has happened is that there are two Indias. You remember Disraeli said there are two nations, the rich and the poor. India is two nations in several ways, many ways. Rich and the poor, English-knowing India, non-English-knowing India, rural India, urban India. And the vast India, vaster India, is not in this environment, this ambience. We are not in India. You want to go to India? You go 120 kilometers out of Delhi. Go into a small road from the main highway. Travel about 20 kilometers inside the countryside, and you find, and this is true of all over the country, whether you go to Kerala, you go to Northeast, which we happened to visit when we were doing our Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics, because Indian poetics is the poetics of Indian literature, and Indian literature is oral. 1576 languages according to the census, only 28 have scripts, but all languages have a literature. So you go to them, you listen to them, you meet them, and across the length and breadth of the country, The values that we are talking about, the cultural values, the human, the interpersonal, the social, they are very much intact, very much alive. They are more alive and intact among those people who have not been polluted by our education. Our education de-educates us. It de-educates us. And of course, there is a myth about education. Education makes us better human beings. Education will make us vote better, vote more intelligently. These are all myths. Education leads to development, again a word which one dislikes. This Darwinism that have been taught to us, whether it is individual Darwinism, social Darwinism, political Darwinism, or biological Darwinism. It's not a fact. It's not a fact. It derives from Genesis, where, God said, I have created a perfect being in you, and now the fish of water and fowl of the air are for you to enjoy. Since then, these powerful races have been submerging others, and have been dominating others, have been using their knowledge for power. But India, many Muslim historians, medieval, they tell us that the question that they ask themselves is, how is it that when even the combined Christian armies were defeated by Saladin on the gates of Vienna, how is it that the Hindus put up such a deathly resistance? It took 400 years for Islamic armies to march from Peshawar to Delhi. It took them only 30 years to convert and conquer Iran. The valiant martial Persians, they were captured, converted, defeated in 30 years. But from Peshawar to Delhi, it took 400 years. And even that period, because I don't know what we mean by emergence or submergence. Who was submerged? What was submerged? Was our intellectual systems submerged? Was our intrinsic faith in ourselves submerged? Or were we lost political independence? Maybe we were made poorer than we were at one time. But all through that period, sir, I think the Hindus were always alive, very much alive. The worst period of the subordination history, the worst period from about the 12th, 13th century to 17th century, when the Marathas started reasserting themselves. For those 500-600 years also, if you read that period carefully, you see how single individuals, small groups, they were always resisting, and there was always a resistance. But I should not go into all these, diversions of history. It will take too long. But re-emergence, I think Hindus who had become ashamed of being Hindus, who were given a feeling, our education, our young people who come out of the schools and colleges, at best they are ignorant, at worst they have contempt for themselves. It is those people who now feel that they can now stand on level ground with the Hebraic civilization, but mind you, the Vedic civilization, Sanatana, Jaina, Buddha, Sikh, has never been submerged by the Hebraic civilizations. The monotheistic, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, mentally. So perhaps what we mean is intellectual or systemic, that we perhaps lost. Yes, at one time, the armies never marched out of India, but ideas always marched out of India. The Silk Route was not just a route of trade. The Silk Route was route of Buddhist thought. the Silk Route in all the 4 directions, right up to Sri Lanka, and the South Asia, where the Shaivite system went. The Mekong countries, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, all these went. There was this time when that role that our civilization had, because the word Hindu, it is we all know the history, but it's basically a Sanatan Vedic civilization. What we should be talking about is the Vedic civilization. And all these systems, Pantha, they are growths from our Vedic civilization. Sanatan Dharma, and when one of the Sikh Taksals, Taksal, they have Taksal, missionary, they invited me to speak on Dharma, the concept of Dharma, concept of knowledge in Hindu Dharma. I asked them, my Sikh brothers, what is Hindu Dharma? I don't know. You tell me. If you ask me about Hindu Dharma, the first Bauddhic Grantha is Rig Veda. And the most Arvachin, modern Bauddhic Grantha of Hindu Dharma is Guru Granth Sahib. You see, same structure, metrical text of knowledge. And that's a Rishiyon ki Bani. And Guru Granth Sahib is Bhakton ki Bani. Rig Veda is Punjab's gift to India. Guru Granth Sahib is India's gift to Punjab. You see, I think the worst time of our submersion, India produced great literature, bhakti poetry. The finest poetry of all over India was produced at the time when we think we were submerged. And they are re-emerging now. I don't want to, because I am supposed to chair and make only comments. I am very lucky. Devashish ji was in JNU with us. And it's such a coincidence that when I came here today, I discovered that an 1985-87 year batch student of JNU is today delivering the main lecture. The other part of this theme is, he is giving the main lecture, the keynote lecture. The other part of the theme is leadership. Whose leadership? Leadership of the Hindu mind, leadership of the Hindu culture and civilization. I think we never really foregone that. Remember, till 11th century, the Arab astronomers used to come to Ujjaina, and meet the Varamihir. Varamihir was in Ujjaina, and they used to come there. 6th, 7th century, Heliodorus became a Vaishnavite and built a column in Vidisha, which is still there. So the that leadership of the Indian mind is very much there. I think Obama ji, in all earnest, has told Bombay University students, if you had not invented the numerals, there would have been no computer, no computational technology. You see? And the Arab word for numerals, Hinse. Hinse means Hindse. It's an irony. We call them Arabic numerals. And the sword, the Arab sword, with which Islam conquered Africa, part of Europe and Iranian world, that sword was made from steel made in Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka. And the steel is called Hinsi. Hinsi. That is the word, Arab word for the steel. I don't think we ever gave up. Even today, I think we are still the intellectual and moral leaders. The only problem is we have accepted the fact that if you don't have much money, if you do not have power over others, then you are submerged. In our tradition, knowledge was never acquired to hold power over others. The goal was to gain knowledge over your own self, to exercise power over your own self. The ultimate education, the Paravidya, you see, it is according to Shankaracharya, even beyond Vedas. Even the Vedas, Adi Shankaracharya says, do not contain knowledge. So knowledge lies beyond. So if you are confident The problem is we have lost our self-respect. If we regain our self-respect, that we can gain only if, before teaching our knowledge to others, let us teach our knowledge to ourselves. Our teachers have not read. Our teachers do not know anything. They can't name 5 thinkers. They have not read a single book. And they argue that, we must introduce Indian texts into the universities. Ask them, give us the specimen. They have not read. So, the problem is ours. We were leaders, collectively and individually. We have produced great world leaders. Great world leaders. Mahabharata, Krishna, Arjuna, Bhishma Pitama. I mean, look at them. What kind of leadership are we? The foundations of management is an alien discipline for us. Devashish, don't mind. You are a professor and director of Indian Institute of Management. Because managing others is a craft. Managing people. Managing means manipulation. You manipulate. And marketing means telling lies. You see, only if you tell lies about your goods, you succeed in selling it. But then, modern world, globalization is marketization. And the global world is a single market. Single market. From that Asian world, which was the substratum was the Indian thought, it was a world of one mind. It has become world of one market. One market. But if you make a world of market, you can't survive for long. I'll come back again after. Now, there are 2 points I must say. You see, leadership, you can talk of individual leadership. A good teacher is a good leader. A good manager is a good leader. A good Mahatma who really teaches people by his example is a good leader. But there is also corporate leadership. Because in an organized society, when we move from the Rousseauesque state to society, and from society to state, then we need corporate leadership, collective leadership. And I think one of the advantages, very few modern disciplines have anything to teach, but one of the disciplines that teaches us is corporate management. How you collectively, as a group, manage a large society in the interest of the people. And Devashish ji is going to talk about corporate management. And I will hear you with great interest. Please come. Thank you.